This presentation is about managing invoices in tax workflow. The easiest way to find existing invoices for your client is to go to the client list and select the client who has invoices. For example, Sylvia, she has 5 invoices, and you can immediately double click on the number of invoices on the left hand side bar and see what these invoices are. And that will open the client record and automatically open the invoices tab in the client record, showing you the invoices for this client. Now this list contains all the invoices for this client, and you can filter it out by the status on the fly, or sort it or group it, such as final invoices, or show all invoices as well. And you can also see the office that issued the invoice and the total amount due if it's still pending the payment, as well as at the bottom you can see the totals for each category, the total amount, the paid amount, as well as the due amount. Another way of seeing your invoices would be to go to the time and billing system and open the menu called View Invoices. You will see all invoices for all clients. It's similar to what you would see in one client's record, but it's gonna just show you invoices for all the clients, where you can filter it down the same way like we did it on the client record, or group it by multiple clients like this. So you can see how many clients have how many invoices. Now you can see groupings under each grouping category, so you can see the total breakdown of invoices by client. And you can use additional filters. For example, show me all New Jersey office billings to date. And you can set up additional filter, everything that has been paid in part or in full. So you can see your totals for the given time period that you can select in one of the filters up above. So this is a reporting functionality that gives you total control to slice and dice the information according to your grouping and filtering criteria, like you can do it anywhere else in the system as well, not just necessarily for invoices. So let's take a look at what an invoice is and how you can manage an invoice for your client. We're going to start with a new invoice for Sylvia. When you create a new invoice, it's obviously blank, and the most important part is which client it is issued for payment, as well as the office that is issuing the invoice. Now, tax workflow can have multiple offices, so each office can have their own invoice templates, and we will talk about managing invoice templates in a separate presentation. What's important here is that when you issue an invoice, you usually select the same office that the client is listed under. So Sylvia is currently listed in our Illinois office, so by default tax workflow will issue the invoice off of the Illinois office, but it can be overridden. When you create an invoice, it has a status of being a draft invoice. It's very similar to QuickBooks concept of estimates, meaning that it's editable. You can change the line items within the invoice at any time. You can add more line items or delete the line items or merge them. But the whole idea is it's not a final invoice. It has not been yet submitted to client for payment. So as it is, it remains a draft invoice. You can continue to add more line items to it as you go through different workflow rules. So how can you add line items to an invoice? There are several ways you can do it. One way would be to manually add a line item to an invoice. For example, we can add a fixed fee line item from your invoiceable or expense accounts that you can customize, and that will be a separate presentation about how to customize the accounts in tax workflow. And accounts are very similar to the QuickBooks concept of a line item. It has a default rate and a default name. Obviously you can change the rate as you add a new say, tax preparation services line item to an invoice. Now, when you add a new line item to an invoice, it has a rate, it has quantity, and it has a total amount. So you can change those at will. So if you don't want to use a default rate, you can override it or change the quantity, and so the tax workflow will recalculate the amounts. There are some other fields on the line item that are used in tax workflow, such as the period where this line item accrued. If you are adding a line item for a certain period, for example, if you're using monthly billing, you can indicate a certain month in here. But most of the time, you don't even have to do that, because there is another way of adding a line item, which is through the workflow rules. For example, here I opened a new project template screen that has an option to automatically add a new line item to a new invoice when a project is automatically created. So for a bookkeeping project, you can auto-populate every month a new invoice with a fixed fee line item for bookkeeping services for all the clients that you have that project running. In which case, the system will automatically populate for you these fields in the line item that it will add: week, month, quarter, and year. So for the monthly bookkeeping, it will automatically create this invoice. It will automatically add the line item for monthly bookkeeping services and populate the month, quarter, and year for which the service was rendered. Now there are two text fields. The billing description is visible to a client if you customize the invoice template for this field to be visible, but the comments field is for internal use only, so it's not going to be shown on the client invoice. And you can keep track of comments within the comments field. It's a rich text, so you can actually put in some, I don't know, screenshots, pictures, create lists of bullet points, and so forth. So when you create a line item, you can change it, you can delete it, you can also merge it. So for example, let's add another line item for, say, postage and delivery. And at some point you may want to decide, I don't want to charge too many separate line items, but I want to merge these line items into one. In which case you select these line items, click on merge to line items, and you can bulk it all under tax preparation services. So now we have one single line item that has the amount of $260, and instead of having two different line items for $250 and $10 each. Now you can also add invoice credits, and this small wizard will help you decide how you want to evaluate that invoice credit to this client. You can also apply referral credits. The referral credits is a feature within the tax workflow that helps you provide referral credits on your invoices for clients who are referring a lot of other clients for you. So I just added another referral for Sylvia. I made another client called Jerry Madsen that Sylvia referred to us, and I indicated that we owe her $25 as a credit for that referral. So now on that invoice I can apply that credit. Once the new client becomes active, we can give Sylvia a discount of $25 for referring Jerry Madison to us. And so we add a discount to this new invoice, reducing the total amount of the invoice to $235. We will talk about how to add a work time in a separate demo. Here we're just going to add an existing work time that we have collected as part of our workflow before. So as you capture work times, you can indicate whether the work time was billable or non-billable, and the billable work times can go into an invoice. And we currently have 2 billable work times for this client. that I can transfer to the invoice. You can only transfer the billable work time only once to only one invoice. And you can do that in bulk by transferring all of the work times or individually. And as you transfer the work times, you can do a review of each work time or uncheck the review, press button to transfer them automatically. Today I'm gonna use the review invoice items feature so I can show you more what can happen as you add invoiceable work time. So when you add a work time, you need to indicate which hourly rate you would like to apply for this work time if it's not already there in the work time. So when you capture a work time, you can also optionally indicate which rate you would like to use. But in many instances, people don't do that. So when you add it to an invoice, you need to indicate which rate it was. And we currently have two rates. We are adding work time for John Smith, so we are seeing his hourly rates that are available, and we also have an hourly rate account that is global for any user, for any office. It's like a default hourly rate account applicable in any instance that we can use. Since we are adding John Smith's work time, we're going to use his rate, which is a default rate. And then we are adding a second line item added by another person who doesn't have a rate associated with him. So we're going to use the default rate that is already available for the 2 hours that was entered into the system. Now, when you add an hourly rate, it will copy the billing description from the hourly rate. If the hourly rate or hourly work time that you added doesn't have a billing description, that billing description can be taken off of a default work time account billing description on the account settings. So basically, if you add a billing description to your work time, it will go to an invoice. If you don't, a default billing description will be used for the rate that you applied to this work time. And if that is empty, then you can see nothing and type in manual billing description that you would like to show on the invoice. Now we have 4 line items in our invoice. When you add work time accounts, the serviced on column takes the date when the work time was captured, but you can override that. You can actually change this date to be today's date if you would like to not show the actual date when the work time was captured by the person. You can also merge work time rates, just like you can merge fixed fee line items. For example, again, you can select multiple work times, select those rates, and then merge it. You can merge the work times under work time accounts, or you can even skip that and merge the work time under a generic account, say tax preparation services, and charge a flat fee that would be by default calculated off of the existing amounts of your work time, such as $1,800, but you can say, no, I'm going to charge $2,000, and that would be quantity number 1. So once we close it, you will see tax preparation services 2,000, and we can actually merge these two as well so that it shows a total of $2,260 tax preparation service fee. So now when we finished populating the invoice, we can submit it to client for payment. In that case, we click this button called Issue Invoice. It will make it read-only, and that way you will not be able to add any new line items while you are waiting for the client to pay this invoice. While you still cannot modify the actual line items, there are still some things you can change. For example, you can add additional notes to this invoice. Like here, I added a note that we are still waiting for payment on this invoice. Or you can add documents, like files, to this invoice. For example, if a client finally paid paid it, you can scan a check and attach it to this invoice so you know which check was used to pay this invoice, and so on. So you can also use the memo field to keep track of any additional information as well. It still remains editable even though the invoice is issued, so you can take additional notes on it while you're waiting for it to be paid. But you cannot add or delete or change any line items in here because you're still waiting for the client to pay for it. What you can do, if you made a mistake and the client asks you to reissue the invoice because there was a mistake, you can reverse an invoice back to the draft and make these changes. So I'm clicking this button, it becomes editable again, and I can offer another discount. Say, add invoice credit item, another $25, right? So now the invoice amount is different. So I can save it, and I can see what it's going to look like when you deliver it to the client for payment. I can use the print preview button. It will show me the invoice layout according to the settings of the template. And again, this invoice is issued by the Illinois office. This is the office address and the name of the business. That happens to be Illinois office. And we can put in a logo and we can customize it. But this is something that comes out from the invoice template itself. You can change the invoice template. This is a default template that has no logo but has more detail on it. Anyway, you can decide which invoice you want to use and what kind of format of the invoice you would like to use for different offices or different types of invoices that you would like to issue to your clients. You can email this invoice to a client as a PDF attachment. It will create an email based on an invoice email template. It will attach this invoice as a PDF file, and it will use the email template that you can customize specifically for the office that invoice was issued from. So we are issuing the invoice from Chicago office. That is why it is using the Chicago city and Illinois state down below. If we were emailing it to our New York client, that would be New York, New York zip code and state and city. So the email and the invoice templates are linked together, meaning that if you generate an invoice using your first office template, then you should probably create an email template for that office to deliver these invoices using the same signature for that first office. And you can develop a different template for the second office and third office. You can have as many offices as you would like. Another way of delivering the invoices for payment would be to publish the invoice on a client portal for client to pay on your client portal for it. Client portal is a built-in feature into tax workflow, so you can integrate it with the client portal to seamlessly publish the invoice for payment over there, as opposed to relying on a third-party service. You can also sync the invoice with QuickBooks. That's the button you can use right there. That way you can reflect the accounts receivables in your QuickBooks file that you use to keep track of your expenses for your office as well, and keep that information synchronized with QuickBooks at all times. The next step would be to mark this invoice as paid when you receive a payment from client, such as a check or a credit card payment. If the client pays the invoice on the client portal, it will be reflected automatically. So this concludes this presentation, managing invoices, and I suggest you watch a second part, which is managing the payments from clients. We will talk more about how you can accept payments and how you can reflect payments for multiple invoices or accept partial payments during that second presentation. Thank you for your time.